It's nice to hang around with certain people sometimes, isn't it? I think the most enjoyable people to hang around are not people, people without a sense of self. And that's what satsang is, really. You're just kind of hanging around with a person that doesn't have a sense of a separate self, a sense of any separation. And it's enjoyable. It's very pleasant. It gives you a feeling of peace, happiness, love, which is your natural state. It allows your natural state to come forward, not because of anything that I or anyone else like this says. That's completely unimportant, really. It's just the beingness, your beingness, the beingness of all beings. And when you're with someone without a sense of self, there is only this beingness, not a personal beingness, not an I am beingness, free of that, just being itself. It's beautiful. To be with someone that doesn't want anything from you, that doesn't want you to be any different than you are, that doesn't want anything in life at all, just is. So you can be exactly as you are and experienced exactly as you are. You don't have to be any different than you are to be accepted, to be loved. There's no judgment because there's no desire for anything to be different than it is. Yes, if you're not free yourself, you're living in a sense of separation, a sense of ego, a sense of I want this and I don't want that, and judgments and suffering and all the other things that go along with it, just as we all did. No awakened, no being that ever awakened in this life ever didn't have the sense of separation before that and all the suffering that went along with it. It's not something that we forget. And if we do start forgetting, you remind us of suffering and we remember that suffering and we need to remember that suffering because if we don't remember it, what good are we to you? How can we help you if we don't know what suffering is? In this liberation, there is no suffering. No suffering, zero suffering, because there has to be somebody to suffer. And there isn't one. There isn't any. So in fact, suffering doesn't exist, has never existed. And yet your experience of suffering is absolutely real. And that we feel too. We feel your suffering as if it were real. And at the same time, knowing that it's not. But that doesn't mean we discount it. It's nothing. No, it's suffering. It's terrible suffering. And we feel that same suffering empathically because there's no separation here. Your suffering is my suffering. And liberation is freedom from that. Freedom from suffering. Freedom from wanting anything to be different in the world. Birth is wonderful and death is equally wonderful. No difference at all. Health is nice and sickness is nice. Sickness is just as wonderful as health is. There's no difference. It's a different experience, that's all. It's just a different experience. It's all wonderful. It's all part of this presence, this oneness, all of it, everything. So there's no more discrimination into likes and not likes, no more discrimination into opinions or into things that are good and things that are bad. It's all good. Birth and death, suffering and not suffering, health and sickness, pain and pleasure. It's all the same. It's all good. It's all part of this thing. There is nothing that's wrong or not perfect in this world. It's hard for the separate self to acknowledge that because our opinions are so strong and so conditioned to believe that this is wrong and this is right. But when all desire and the sense of separation goes, that kind of dissolves. It just falls away. It doesn't mean we're going to start, raping people and robbing banks. Why would we do that? We don't have any desire. There's no desire for anything other than what's happening in this very moment. And there's no desire for that either because it is happening in this very moment. A desire means I want something that isn't here now. And there isn't anything that I want that isn't here now. But I totally love what's here now, whatever that may be, including sickness. I had a wonderful experience today of having a sore throat and a little bit of fever, and I slept for about 18 hours, fasted for 18 hours, and it was just exquisite. It was just so perfect, just so beautiful. Why would I want health more than that? I don't. And yet health comes, and that's just as good. It's not that one thing is any better than another. It's all the perfection of life, simply because it is. So it's nice to be with somebody that experiences that because somehow you begin to experience it too. Your mind may fight and say, what about global warming? What about Hitler? What about corruption? What about, militia groups and people dying of COVID? What about COVID? That's not can't be good, but it's all good. It's all good simply because it is. That's why it's good. Because it exists, it's good. It's only our thoughts that say it's not. And that's what suffering is. I don't want this to be. I don't want a pandemic. Look at all the people who are dying. So I want to introduce something, whether you've heard this before. I heard this from Rupert Spira, but many people have used this same analogy, and I find it's a beautiful analogy, and I think it'll help you realize where this experience is coming from, where this beingness is coming from, where your beingness is coming from, unfettered by your thoughts, your mind, your sense of a self, unblocked by that, your true nature, your true beingness. And this is, if you've ever spent some time with a river, and I grew up on a river, so I spent a lot of time with a river. Everyone in my family did. So if you watch a river, you see these little whirlpools that form, right? Sometimes only for a second, just and then the river's smooth again flowing. A little whirlpool and then smooth again flowing. And sometimes the whirlpool gets very deep and it spirals down and you can look into that whirlpool and you can see the bottom of the river. You can see the sand and rocks at the bottom of the river very clearly because the water is kind of moved aside. There's a space there. The whirlpool has created this space where you can look right down to the bottom of the river. And that whirlpool lasts for a longer time. But eventually, if you look at it long enough, that will also disappear and just go back to the river again. Right? So it forms and then it's that. Another whirlpool forms and then it goes back to the river, back to the flow of the river. So is that whirlpool why this is such a good analogy for you? For life, for everything that you see and your own being itself. Is that whirlpool ever separate from the river? If you took away the river, would there be a whirlpool? Oh, of course not. Of course not. How could there be? The whirlpool is just an appearance in the river, an appearance of the river, appearing as a whirlpool, a momentary whirlpool or a deeper whirlpool that lasts for minutes. Some of those big whirlpools can last for, 20 minutes or more. But eventually something shifts and the whirlpool is gone and the river flows on. It's always the river. The whirlpool is just an appearance, a short, superficial appearance, just only on the surface of the river, or a much deeper whirlpool that goes all the way to the bottom. It's still the river. They're all just the river. They're all appearances in the river. And the beautiful analogy for this is, so is this body an appearance in this river? This river we could call God, we could call consciousness, we could call life. This body is an appearance that forms and then is gone, forms and then is gone. And yet it's always the river. It's never lost its riverness. We have never lost our riverness. We can't. But when we get so focused on the whirlpool itself, in these human bodies, we forget our riverness. We forget our being nature. And we get so hung up on this body, mind, person, history, life, so hung up on the whirlpool and the details of the whirlpool that we forget what we are. We've only ever been the river. This is just a temporary appearance, that's all. This body, mind is only a temporary appearance. And when we experience the beingness, the riverness of what we are, and realize is there a whirlpool here? Yes, this body's here. It's here temporarily, just as a whirlpool is forming in a river, it's here. I'm not going to deny that. Why would I? It's true. It's here. The whirlpool is here, and this body is here, and mountains and rivers and trees and the world and the universe, it's all here. But it's all whirlpools. It's all temporary. It all comes from this river, never leaves the river when it appears, and it returns fully to the river. It disappears. It appears and it disappears. This body appears and it disappears. What we call birth and death. Birth is the appearance of this body, and death is the disappearance of this body back to the river. Has anything really changed? No, the whirlpool has just stopped whirling. The river has just gone back to its non-whirlpool appearance, its non-whirlpool self. So what we awaken to is that we're still the river. Even while the whirlpool is whirling, it's still the river. Not to get so distracted by the appearance of the whirlpool. It's still the river. It's always the river. It cannot not be the river. If you took away the river, there's no whirlpool. The river doesn't need the whirlpool. The whirlpool needs the river. It can't exist without the river. It is never apart from the river. It is never other than the river. It is never really a whirlpool at all. It's always the river. It's just appearing as a whirlpool temporarily. And what we see as life is this body is appearing temporarily, and mountains are appearing temporarily, and a planet is appearing temporarily, and the universe is appearing temporarily. All of it is coming and forming and changing and coming and going. Now, if we look at the universe, we may say, well, that's a really long time. It almost seems permanent to us, but it's not. It's all coming and going. This solar system is going to change dramatically. We may be worried about global warming and the survival of species on this planet, but eventually the sun is not going to last as the sun. It's going to implode, as all stars do. And no life in this solar system will be able to survive without the sun. And that's fine. That's perfect. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the way it is. It's an appearance in the river and a disappearance in the river. Life is an appearance in the river and death is an appearance in the river. It's all just the river. It's always been just the river. And when we experience life as the river, then where is good and bad? Why is this not all perfect? Of course it is. It's an appearance of the river, and the river is perfect. So every appearance is perfect. Every appearance is perfect. Sickness is perfect. Death is perfect. Health is perfect. Birth is perfect. Love is perfect, and hate is perfect. We don't experience hate because, from this perspective, from the river's perspective, it's all love. It's all perfect. Why? There's nothing to hate. It's all the river. And the river loves itself. It is love itself. It doesn't love anything. It doesn't need to love anything. There's only the river. There's only itself. And itself is love. So that's what it experiences. Hate is the confusion that comes from separation. That's all. It's the confusion that comes from separation. Suffering is the confusion that comes from the illusion of separation. And that also is perfect. This Maya, this illusion, this dream of separation, this forgetting that we're the river is also perfect. Why? Because it is. Clearly, this is how most people experience life. The vast majority of humans throughout recorded history have not been awake, and they've suffered, and they've created suffering for other people. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfect. If the river said, "Nah, that's not perfect. Everybody needs to wake up now. Come on, get on with it." That's not what the river says. The river's always happy with the perfection that is in every moment. And that includes ignorance, that includes the dream, that includes suffering. So you like hanging out, being around a person that realizes its riverness, that knows it's river, knows it's not a person, that this is a temporary appearance. And for some of us, we've experienced many of these temporary appearances. In this one lifetime, we are aware of all these other lifetimes, all these other appearances of whirlpools, all these other appearances of being whirlpools and believing we were whirlpools and suffering because we believed we were a whirlpool and didn't know we were a river. So many experiences like that because it's the river. Everything that exists is the river. So to remember a dozen other lifetimes is nothing. For the river is every lifetime that's ever existed and ever will exist. These whirlpools. In all species, all planets, all solar systems, the river is infinite. The river is being. So when you hang with a being that's free, you're remembering yourself, the river. Because all a free being is, there's no being here. It's just a mirror. It's just a clear mirror. And in this clear mirror, you get to see yourself, not your ego self. You can project your ego self onto this body mind. Sure, you can do that if you want to. If you're so lost in the dream, you probably do that and see a being here. But if you're open at all, if you're open at all to this message, then you see it as a mirror of your true nature, your true being, not a person at all, just a clear mirror, reflecting back to you the river, what you are, the river. And in that moment, you can stop being so obsessed with your this appearance of a person, a body, mind, a separate self, and let go to the beingness, the riverness of what you are. Let go of the whirlpool for a moment and experience the truth of what you are. The whirlpool is only temporary. This life, this body, mind is only temporary. And just like a whirlpool, it's changing all the time until it disappears completely. Why would you want to put all your focus on something like that? Almost the entire human species does this. But why? Why do you want to? Do you think this is a good use of your life? To focus everything on this body mind and improving this body mind and thinking that this body mind is going to wake up? It never will. It's an illusion. That's what waking up is. To see that this person, this separate self, has never really existed. There's only ever been the river. There's only ever been God. The totality that all these appearances arise in and return to. And it doesn't mean when they arise, it's like a birth and now it's separate from its source. It's never separate from its source. How could it be? It couldn't exist. It only exists as its source. An appearance, yes, in many, many different appearances. And I'm not going to deny that all the appearances are different, just as every whirlpool is different. If you spend time in a river and you look at the different whirlpools, every one of them is unique. Every one of them is different. All of them begin as the river, return to the river, and never have left being the river. It just appears that way. When we focus totally on the whirlpool, we can forget about the river. Especially one of those deep ones that goes to the bottom. It's fascinating to look through one of those, how the water is swirling around like a vortex. And if we look at that, and our attention is focused only on the whirlpool, we forget about the river, even if we're standing in the middle of it. We become so consumed with the whirlpool itself. And this is what we do as a human. We become consumed with these appearances, and we forget that they all come from something. I'm not talking about parents. I'm talking about the true source of all of it. This riverness, this beingness, something that we can't see with our physical eyes, and yet is clearly here. When we let go of this obsession with the form, the name and form, with our thoughts and beliefs, we relax into the true nature of our being. And I understand the challenge of it because it's terrifying to let go of this belief in a self. It is. I'm not going to deny that. If you haven't experienced that yet, you will. If you're on this path and you sincerely want to wake up, then you will experience the terror of letting go of existence, letting go of the belief in this separate I as something. Religion tells us, there's a spirit and a soul and it reincarnates and things like that in order to not accept the fact that it's never really existed to begin with. That's too frightening, too terrifying for us to accept. So we cling to this belief with all our might, resist the truth that it's always been the river. The whirlpool is just an appearance of the river. It isn't a whirlpool. It's not separate from the river. It is no separate thing. It just looks that way. To the uninformed, to the ignorant eyes, it looks that way. And this freedom, this liberation from the illusion of a self is the happiness and love and peace that we've always been seeking. But it can only be really found as the very nature of our being itself. And the very nature of our being itself is not a separate self. That doesn't exist. It's only ever been this: God, consciousness, whatever name we want to give it, the source. That's all that's ever been here. That's all that's ever here now. That's all that ever could be here. All the appearances, and there's so many: mountains, rivers, trees, a variety of different people, their personalities all seem so different. Insects, animals, reptiles, birds, this incredible variety. And the incredible beauty of all of this is the fact that it is not separate, that it is all just an appearance of God, just an appearance of Source. That's the realization of non-duality, and that's why our hearts are just so open with gratitude and love. It just completely overtakes anything else. Mm. So as I speak to you, there is no I speaking to you. There is only this experience, only this beingness, this unborn, uncreated. That's all there is. And through this medium, this channel, this whirlpool, this body mind, words can flow. The river can flow. And in this case, it's flowing in the form of words that hopefully you will not be attached to. And you will let this flow awaken your true nature, awaken the riverness in you, the beingness in you. Even if just for a moment, to feel what it feels like not to be a separate self, to let that disappear, let that dissolve, to awaken. What a what a glorious thing that is. And how simple, how perfect. To wake up from such a long dream, a society dream that has been conditioned from the moment of your birth, that runs through generations, ancestral heritage, so much baggage and illusion. And it's all part of the perfection. But to wake up from it, that is glorious beyond measure. That is the only true freedom there is, the only true peace, the only true love, the only true happiness there is. And even throughout your life, you have moments and glimmers and little peekings, little slivers of peace, happiness, and love. And when the sense of self is not so strong, when it falls away, if you really could look at your moments of true happiness, you would see that there is nobody being happy. There's just happiness. When you fall in love and you're deeply in love with someone, you would give your life for them in an instant. That kind of real love. There is no self. No self there. It instantly comes back, and that exquisite experience of all consuming, overflowing love is lessened and falls away when you say, I love this person and I need this person. And back to the I again. And it's not so full. But in some moments when you're together, if you pay attention, you've disappeared. And that's this wonderful feeling of love. And you want that. What are you looking for? The love of this person? Now you're looking for the disappearance of you. That's why you felt this love, because of the disappearance of you. That's why you felt this happiness, because of the disappearance of you. That's why you felt this great profound peace, because of the disappearance of you. So in those moments you are awake. And everyone has moments of this. It's just that they don't know what it is. They think it's the situation that's making them happy, or the person that they've fallen in love with that's just giving them this feeling of love. They don't realize that it's the disappearance, the falling away of an illusion, of a long conditioned illusion, a dream of suffering. It's the falling away of that. It's opening to reality. That's what it is. So everybody in their life is waking up, even if in these very small moments and these very seemingly relative to full awakening, superficial experiences, but they're not, are they? I mean, they don't feel superficial at all when you fall in love. It's a powerful, transformative experience. Something very real is happening, more real than anything you've experienced in your life or ever will, other than falling in love again. And that moment of sheer happiness, of just absolute happiness, where you're truly happy, you know that there's no reason for it. You cannot find a real reason. You can say it's this or this or this, but that only comes after the experience. When the experience is already beginning to fade, that you think you project it onto some situation or person. When you're lying in the arms of your beloved and everything is just the most perfect that it could ever be. You're in heaven, aren't you? This is nirvana. And your mind comes in and says, it's the person. It's this person. That's why I'm feeling it. It's this person. And it distracts you from the experience of truth, which is it's the falling away of separation. Somehow this person helped you let go of your feeling of separation. It's not like you're one with them, you're one with everything. That beautiful bliss of awakening. So already it's happened. Already it's happened many times in your life. And your seeking for it doesn't help you find it. What happens when you fall in love in the way that I just talked about? You can't seek that. There's no way of getting that. It just happens. That happiness, it just happens. There's no way to get it. Don't try. Trying just Trying is a way of saying it's not here now. It's a lie. It's part of the illusion of separation. trying to wake up, trying to find love, trying to be happy is part of the illusion that in this very moment, I am not fully alive, awake, at peace, happy, and absolutely love. That's a lie. You are the river. The river is this. As soon as you let go of this dream, this illusion, this nightmare of a separate person that's just making your life unhappy, separating you from love and peace and happiness, as soon as you let go of this illusion, it's all here. Now. Always now. There's no future time for it or past time. It's here now. And it's always here now. This love does not need another person. It doesn't rely on a person. It is the source and essence of love itself. This happiness doesn't depend on any situation. It is the source and essence of happiness itself. It's your very nature as the river, as God, as the source, as what you truly are, your true self. Hmm. So be the whirlpool, be the appearance, be the person, be all this is fine, but don't forget what you really are. Don't lose that. Don't be a whirlpool that's forgotten it's the river. It just leads to sorrow, suffering. It is the very nature of suffering itself. The sense of being a separate person is suffering. It is suffering itself. It's only the limited freedom that you have from this sense of separation that gives you any joy in life. However it comes about, it's only your freedom from this sense of being a separate person that gives you any joy, any happiness, any love, any peace in life. And when you awaken from this separate self, you realize what the source of all of what you've been seeking is. It's you. It's your true self. It's this source, you. Thank you, my friend. Mm. I'm so happy to offer you this presence of bliss, peace, and love, so that you can awaken to your true nature, to the source in you of this, to be a mirror of this for you, a clear mirror, so that you can truly see yourself.